In this brief video, we will introduce the concept of synthesis in writing a research paper. We will discuss what is synthesis, why is it important, and how do you do it. What is synthesis? Simply put, synthesis is smoothly combining multiple sources and ideas. When writing, you already know the importance of reading multiple sources to thoroughly explore your topic. When it comes time to start writing your paper, you don't just summarize all of your sources one by one and then state your own ideas. You need to find a way to make it all fit together smoothly. This means that each of your paragraphs will include multiple sources and citations as well as your own ideas. Why is synthesis important? As a college student, you are now part of the scholarly conversation. That means you will become familiar with the works of important scholars in your field, and you will contribute your own ideas to theirs through the papers that you write. Just like in any other conversation, you will listen to what others say by reading articles, listening to your professor, and listening to your fellow students. You will acknowledge important scholars by citing their work as evidence in your own papers, and you will add your point of view to the conversation with your own papers. That's how all conversations work. So, how do you do it? Research always begins with you critically reading the sources you find about your topic. That leaves you with numerous ideas or puzzle pieces. Once you have those ideas, think about how they might all fit together. Think about how they're similar or different, how they agree or disagree. Try to identify the different themes or ideas that emerge. Then group the similar ideas together into themes. Sometimes it's hard to see the patterns, but as your research continues, you will find them. Each theme will then represent one paragraph or section in your paper. Don't forget to acknowledge sources that disagree with your position. Let's look at a sample paragraph that does a good job of synthesizing multiple sources speaking on a single theme. This author is writing about factors that influence an employee's motivation while they're in training. One of the factors or themes that the author of this paper identified in their readings focused on the concept of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So this paragraph focuses on intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. They've used multiple sources in this paragraph on that theme. These sources are not merely summarized. They are combined and integrated using a variety of connective words to organize the various points of views on this theme. For example, this author uses a very typical way of organizing the research that they found on this theme. They start out their first sentence, the one that begins with although, by citing a number of authors who have done general research on the idea of extrinsic versus intrinsic factors. These are usually the most important researchers and the original researchers in this area. Then, in the sentences that begin with for example, or whereas, or similarly, the author of this paragraph goes on to talk about some specific examples of the way intrinsic and extrinsic motivation work. And then in the last sentence, the one that begins with however, they go on to note some disagreements and some gaps in the research. Most importantly, the author includes their own analysis and conclusions regarding the research that they've found. What are some of the strategies you might use to help you synthesize the information you find in your many sources? A synthesis matrix, such as this one, is an excellent tool to help you record the main ideas or themes that you see emerging as you do your exploratory research. There are many ways to organize a synthesis matrix. This is one example. In this matrix, the researcher has listed their sources, author and date included to make citations easier later, from top to bottom. adding each one as they read them. Then they list the emerging topics or themes in each article across the top of the matrix. When they add the first citation after reading their first article, they decide what the major point of that article is and add it as a theme. Then they add a summary of the important ideas this article said about that theme. Then they move on to their next articles and add their information to the matrix. Notice not all articles touch on each theme, so some of your boxes will be blank. That's okay. When your matrix is complete, it provides an excellent visual representation of what you've discovered, all the themes you need to include in your paper, and what each source said about them. Each theme becomes a paragraph, or in longer papers, even a section of your paper. You look at what each source said about that theme, and based on that evidence, draw your own conclusions and add your own ideas, and organize it into a paragraph for a successful research paper. You will find a variety of sample synthesis matrices for various levels of writing on the library's website. We strongly recommend you try out this very useful tool. And don't forget, if you need help getting from point A to point B in your research projects, don't hesitate to contact a librarian.